here for CC Arts, and today we are going to be making silk necktie dyed Easter eggs. So to make silk tie dyed Easter eggs, you're going to need silk neckties, or you can use 100% silk scarves or blouses or skirts if you have a 100% silk clothing item that is destined for the scrap pile. This would be a great use for that. The most important thing, however, is that it be 100% silk, and also you're going to want to look for a print that is high contrast and brightly colored. So you can see this one is lots of teeny tiny little flowers, and this one is kind of like a geometric print, lots of dark and light. So you need that 100% silk fabric. You need raw eggs. We will be cooking the eggs with the fabric wrapped around them, so the eggs must be raw. You need a non-reactive pan. So this one is stainless steel. You could also use enamel or glass pan, or a ceramic pan would also work. Then I have here just a container of plain water that I'll be wetting my silk in to make it easier to wrap around the eggs. I'm using rubber bands, but you could use string if that's all you have. These are number 16. They're 2.5 inches. Smaller rubber bands would also work as well. And you'll need scissors to prepare your silk fabric, a tablespoon, and you will need some white vinegar. This will go into the water that you're cooking the eggs in. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is deconstruct our neckties. Most neckties have a manufacturer label towards the bottom of the wide end, so I'm going to clip that off. And it's usually just attached by a couple of stitches on the 4 corners of the label. And then there's usually a thick area of string that looks like a tiny little loop towards the bottom and the top of the tie. Unclip that. Clip loose the beginning of the running stitch that holds the tie folded together. Find a tail, and then I usually just pull and gather, and you can usually pull the entire string out in one piece this way. And there's that piece of string. And now inside your necktie, you'll see this, it's usually white lining fabric, and we're going to hang on to that because we'll be using that later to protect our printed fabric from leaching out into the water and staining all the eggs. We're going to wrap this around our eggs in a later step. So now I have my deconstructed silk tie, and I basically eyeballed the size of the eggs to see how much I needed. Since I do like to save the pointed parts for other projects. So I'm just going to eyeball this now so I can save that cool pointed end. And going to clip that off for later. And maybe I'll make a future video showing you what I do with these silk pieces. And just while I'm thinking of it, you can wash this silk and save it for other crafts, but typically you cannot dye an egg with the silk more than once. I've seen some people say that you can do it and you just get a much lighter result. But I have not tried it. I've heard that you don't get great results, and so I just kind of stick with the idea that once you've done it once, you can wash the scraps and use them for collage or for other fiber arts, maybe weaving, but not for dyeing again. So I'm going to save that extra piece over here, and my new piece that I just cut out is on the bottom of my stack. Right, so we're actually done with the scissors now, and so the first thing we're going to do as we begin to wrap our eggs is take your silk, and you'll see that on your pattern You have the top side or the right side of the fabric, which is the part that you see when you're wearing the tie. And you have the underside, which is much lighter in pattern. So we're going to wet the fabric. Remember, we're using 100% silk. Squeeze it out because we just want it damp because it helps it to cling smoothly to the egg. So we squeeze it out. We're working so that the right side, the printed side, is facing the egg. And I like to wrap my egg so that the larger rounded end of the egg is in the bottom of the wrap. So I would consider the top of the wrap to be where I'm gathering it to make my knot or make my rubber band tie. And you can see that I have definitely more than enough fabric. It's better to have too much than not enough. So I'm gonna pull that tight, take one of my rubber bands and wrap it around and around at the join, or it would be a knot, I guess, at the gather of the egg. And let me just show you this first one so you could see that I have made the fabric as smooth as I can and tightly wrapped it. So it's a nice, neat little egg package. Now that I have this, I'm gonna take the liner and I'm gonna pull it apart because I don't think I'll need both halves. I'm gonna start with the wide end and just wrap this around all around the egg. This does not have to be perfect. What this does is it just helps to get a more secure contact between the printed silk fabric and the surface of the egg. And so now I have that tightly wrapped around my egg. I'm going to go with several more rubber bands and just wrap them from opposite directions so that my little egg packet stays together when it boils. And I think I'll do one more. So I'm doing 4 rubber bands, but you could probably get away with 2 or 3. And then in my pot of water. Now, obviously I will fill this water to above the level of the eggs when all the eggs are in there. But just so that you know what we're going to do later, we're also going to add 3 tablespoons of white vinegar to our water that we are boiling the eggs in. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to rinse it in my clean water so I'm not putting vinegar on my drop cloth. Okay, next one. Let's do a few here so you can see how it goes. So take my silk, 100% silk fabric. I'm gonna wet it in my clean water, squeeze it out, open it up, working with the right side or the heavily printed side of the fabric. I'm gonna place my egg in, wide side down. Then I'm going to pull and smooth my damp silk so that I get a nice tight even coverage on as much of my egg as possible. And just remember, friends, we are working with raw eggs, so you don't want to squeeze on the egg itself. You want to be pulling and squeezing on the fabric, being careful because we're working with raw eggs, which are fragile. So now I'm going to take my rubber band and wrap that tightly at the neck of the fabric, creating this little pouch or packet. And you see I am going lots of times around with the rubber band because I do want that to be quite secure. So I get a nice little packet. Take some of the white liner fabric, again starting with the wide side down so I have lots of coverage. wrapping all around in any direction, just making sure that it's very thoroughly wrapped up. Nice and as tight as you can comfortably make it, but really no right or wrong way to do this. It's like a little mummy egg. And then we're going to take 2, 3, or 4 rubber bands. One across the center, one going in the opposite direction. And I'm going to do 3 this time, and I probably will try one with just 2, and then we can see, is it really necessary to do 4 or 3, or is 2 enough? And into my water that has my vinegar we go. Number 3, 100% silk fabric, wet it in the clean water. Squeeze that out. Open it up. So with the right side or the pattern side facing up so that it will touch the egg. Take the egg and put the wide side in the center of the fabric and pull the fabric smooth, being careful because we are working with raw eggs. We want to be cautious with our fragile items. Pull that nice and smooth. And what will happen, and you'll see this when I show you the finished ones, is that you'll get more of a clean or an exact print of the fabric near the round edge, and then where the wrinkles are, you'll kind of get like a swirly tie-dye effect. If you remember the sublimation t-shirts that were very popular in the last 5 years or so, kind of like that effect where it looks like a tie-dye that's been folded over and is kind of broken up a little bit. It's a really unique, interesting effect on the pattern. Now, well, let's see. So I have these 2 skinny ones. Let's see if we can do it with those, because why waste if we have something that we can use? I have seen other artists do this where they used a cut up old sheet or pillowcase where they've specified that it has to be cotton. I have always done this with the fabric lining from the ties, because why cut up a pillowcase if I already have tie liner that I had to cut up because I was using the tie? So to me it just seems like a no-brainer that I'm going to use the material that came with the other material I'm using, because I don't really like to waste things. I like to think about ways that we can craft with what we have. Now, I said I was going to use fewer rubber bands before, but since I used skinnier fabric, I'm actually going to make sure that I get this pretty secure. And I do also see like one area where I can see the tie fabric poking through, but I'm not going to let that concern me. I don't think that's going to be any big deal. We'll see in about a half an hour though. But don't worry, I will pause the recording when we get time to put these on the stove, so you won't have to sit here and listen to me chitter chatter for half an hour about boiling water. All right, that's 3. Let's do one more, friends, and then I will put you on pause. So we're going to wet the fabric. It is 100% silk. Squeeze out the water. Open it up. Make sure that my pattern side is facing up so that the right side of the fabric or the pattern side of the fabric is making contact with my egg. I'm being super gentle with my fragile egg and pulling on the fabric to make it nice and smooth. Then I'm going to take my rubber band and wrap it tightly around the loose fabric to make like a little bunch or bundle. Then I'm going to take my liner from my neckties and wrap that all around. So yeah, you know, when I said before about how you could use a blouse or a silk scarf, if you're using something like that, then you might need the additional fabric of the old sheet or pillowcase. But when you're using the neckties, you don't need the additional fabric because they come with it. This one actually has a whole lot of fabric because it looks like it was 2 layers sewn together, and I didn't realize that when I started. So now I get this little fringy amount looping around, but we're just gonna rubber band it down nice and smooth. It's just extra protection for our egg while it boils. All right, friends, I'm gonna keep wrapping these up and I will come back to you once I have taken the eggs off the stove. So just to remind you, I'm gonna finish wrapping all of the eggs. I'm gonna wet my 100% silk in the water, wrap it tightly, then wrap it with a liner, rubber band it, and put it in my water. My water has 3 tablespoons of vinegar. I'm gonna boil it, and then I'm gonna take the heat down to simmer and let that cook for 30 minutes. So I'll see you after that's all done. Hi friends, we're back. Okay, I unwrapped several from the outer wrapping and we're gonna finish the rest on screen. What I did when I took these off the heat, and I did keep them at a low boil or a vigorous simmer, whatever you wanna call that, for 30 minutes. Then I took them off the heat, drained the hot water and added 2 trays of ice and cold water. That's called shocking. So I shocked them to stop them from cooking and also so that they would be cool enough to handle. Now the first few that I unwrapped were definitely still warm to touch inside the inner wrapping. So I also have a bowl with 1 tray of ice over here to hold my eggs as I unwrap them. Now you can see when I unwrapped this one, oh, that had some great color on it, that my inner wrapping has also taken some of both the dye colors and the pattern. So that was a particularly effective tie, and I can't wait to see what that egg looks like in there. I will also let you guys know that when I was initially wrapping these on screen earlier, I felt as I was wrapping that one of the eggs was cracked. And I didn't want to stop what I was doing in the middle of the video and ruin the whole thing, so I just kept going. Now, I unwrapped the outer wrapping of that egg. I haven't unwrapped the entire egg. It certainly still feels cracked. But I went ahead and kept going with it because I thought it would just be an interesting experiment to see what happens. And also, while I would not eat an egg that has a cracked shell that was cooked like this, because these are edible, you can absolutely go ahead and eat these, but I wouldn't eat the one that the shell cracked and has now absorbed clothing dye into the inner egg, because what you'll see is that I would imagine the egg itself also has dye on it now. There's a really interesting technique, culinary art technique from Japan called tea eggs. And what they do is they hard boil eggs. I believe they hard boil the eggs first. It would make sense because they then crack them very, very gently by rolling them so that they get a fine array of teeny tiny cracks all over the shell. And then they soak them in black tea. And then when you peel the egg, you get this sort of like mosaic pattern. So I'm curious to see, maybe we'll go ahead and peel that egg as well as unwrap it to find out. I'm curious to see if we will get that mosaic pattern that you would get from a Japanese tea egg. So that's why I went ahead and kept it in the batch, because I just thought it would be a fun experiment to see what happens. So I think this might be my last outer layer. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, this is my last one. Okay, this one also looks like it took a fair amount of dye on the inner wrapping. So we good in there. Yep. And like I said, I will wash these out just in the washing machine in like a lingerie bag or something, and dry them so that they can be used again for projects like this. All right, first one, my friends, this is the exciting part. Are you ready? Oh my, that is so awesome. I am loving that beautiful egg. I hope you can see that, how wonderfully it took the pattern. So pretty. Maybe we'll get a close-up at the very end so you can see all of the beautiful patterns that we made today, and to inspire you for when you do this project. Number 2, lovely. There we go. Maybe I could get my technical assistant to come over here and make the screen a little bit closer. Oh, cameraman, can you get a close-up for us, please? And thank you, because they're the magic words. This is the cracked one. So this is going to be really interesting. Can you just bring it forward? Thank you. Okay, and can you angle it down towards me? Hi, guys. Oh, it's a close-up. Woo-woo. Awesome. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, it smells like an egg, that's for sure. Oh, it's kind of yuck. Well, that's obviously, so that's the dye has gotten in there. And you can see it did take the pattern. I don't really know if I want to peel it because I feel like it's kind of yucky. You know, there's no pattern on the inside, but we're just going to go ahead and put that in there because it's yuck. Oh, cameraman, can you take that away? Here, that was not pleasant, friends. So take it from me, if an egg cracks while you're wrapping them, throw it away. Don't go ahead and run the experiment. It's not a worthwhile experiment. Although it did actually dye the egg, so the part of the shell that was intact looked beautiful. All right, here's our third Easter egg. And you know what? If you don't celebrate Easter, that's okay. You can still make dyed eggs as an art form. I know there are lots of cultures around the world that dye eggs, not just to represent Easter, but as an art form. For a lot of cultures, eggs represent spring, when all the green things are growing and the world is new again. So here we have number 5. This one's got some cool swirlies in it. Oh, the polka dots! Look at that, friends. Fun polka dots. So, I don't plan to reuse these rubber bands after they've been boiled. Some of them break, some of them don't, but I usually just figure they are not useful anymore. Here's another unique pattern. We have 4 more, including the one I'm doing now. So friends, if you try this at home, please, please, please comment on the video and include a picture of your work so that I can see all of your awesome dyed eggs. So just to remind you, as I unwrap these last few eggs, we want to use 100% silk to wrap these. Here's a nice abstract one. It looks kind of like a watercolor painting. We want to use 100% silk. We want to have 3 tablespoons of vinegar in our water that we're boiling our eggs in. And we are boiling those eggs in a non-reactive pan. I have used stainless steel with great success, but I have heard that you can also use glass or ceramic. What else is important to remember? Remember to be gentle when you're wrapping because you are working with raw eggs. And remember that you have to cook them for 30 minutes. I think those are all. Oh, you can use other types of 100% silk. It does not have to be neckties. You can use silk scarves or blouses or skirts that maybe have a tear in them that you're not going to wear anymore. And this one turned out rather light. Also another sort of pastel-y watercolor one. So that is it for today, friends. I hope you enjoyed this egg dyeing art project. Let's see if we could come in for a close-up of our wonderful eggs. And I hope to see you all soon.